This is Isaiah Kanner-Fleffa, and you're listening to the Texas Rangers Fanatic podcast with Alex Plink.
What's going on, Rangers Nation? It's Alex Plink with Dallas Sports Fanatic, and this is the Texas Rangers Fanatic podcast, episode 29. I don't know, after trade deadline, dog days of August coming up. I will say this, is that this is being recorded Sunday, August 1st, after the fact. So we have a little Heim time that we got to get. There's been a lot of Heim time these last 2 days, and I am joined by Garrett Jones. Garrett, thank you so much for joining.
It's an honor. You know, last year, like this time last year when the Rangers were only a week into their season, right, we got together and did an episode, and I was flattered to be a guest, and now I'm just even more flattered to come on as a recurring guest. That's a big honor. So thank you, Alex, for having me on, and thank you, DSF family, for supporting us.
Appreciate it. And may I recall, I'm not just being joined by Garrett Jones, I'm being joined by the voice of Houston. Is it Houston Baptist University?
Houston Baptist,
Garrett.
yes.
Yes. So yeah, for anybody who's goes to Houston Baptist or listens to any of their games, this is your man right here.
Well, thank you, Alex. That's very kind. It's a new thing in the works, and I'm looking forward to football season this calendar month. So I'm really looking forward to that. August
1st. And you said that like 1 week into the season. You think about the last 12 months and you think about a week into the season. I think this was, they had their first homestand at this point. Because they were on the West Coast, they didn't play their game yet. At this point, the Rangers had played 5 games in 2020, 5 regular season games.
I hated the 2020 season, man. It's just everything. I mean, even through the World Series, it just felt so processed and just like checking a box. I look back and I watch highlights of that season. And I'm just like, I wish it would have never happened.
And then, of course, and I was talking to Jose early this year, the first homer at Globe Life Field, they're going to have all in the record books, and you see the video of it, and there's nobody there, or you have faceless cardboard people.
It was David Dahl, right?
First hit in the new ballpark was David Dahl.
Yeah.
First homer at the ballpark was Joey Gallo.
Okay.
And unfortunately, I have to say this is former Ranger Joey Gallo and now New York Yankee Joey Gallo and beardless Joey Gallo.
That's a sight to behold.
That's rough to say.
Yeah. And that you were just talking about all this change in the past 12 months. Like, imagine saying
all this change in the past week.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to get your thoughts regarding the trade deadline, and I'm going to kind of run this through. So it started, first of all, it was a very ominous week. They had the off day on Monday, and then just going in on Tuesday, I could even sense that something was up based on Chris Woodward. And I'm not always the best in like interpreting certain things,
right?
But you could kind of tell that he knew something was up based on just kind of tiptoeing around the answers. And he was kind of like, listen, I do know something, but out of respect to our front office, I'm not going to say anything.
Right.
And that's what we thought, oh boy, it's Tuesday going to happen. Well, nothing happened on Tuesday. And we got a good conversation in with Joey Gallo, and it seemed like, I don't know if he knew what was going on. I'm hearing like this was months into the works from what I'm hearing. Like the Yankees were going after Joey Gallo during spring training.
Right. Right. Yeah. Gallo is somebody that they've had their eye on for a long time. And those discussions really ramped up over the past couple of weeks from what I've heard and gathered and everything like that. And it was a little ominous. And the thing that really stood out to me was that Joey, never held back from addressing the rumors, right? He straight up said, I keep on checking my phone every morning, trying to see where I'm going to go. And I hope it's the Rangers. And I think that's the biggest jab to the Ranger fans' heart, right? Hearing those words come out of Joey Gallo's mouth. And then obviously on Wednesday, that situation developing.
And then, of course, being scratched from the lineup, you knew it was happening. I mean, Joey Gallo, Chris Woodward wouldn't put Gallo in and then scratch him unless there was either a severe medical issue, which there wasn't, or if it was a trade. I think what also makes it hurt a little bit most, or at least from my perspective, that would make me as if a part of the Rangers organization to reach out a little bit more, is because you think about Joey Gallo is a Scott Boras client, and those guys, they thrive in free agency. So for a Scott Boras client to sit there and say, I want to stay with this organization, I know what I could get in free agency. I know the type of player I am. I mean, just look at his buddy Bryce Harper, what he was able to do. So to sit there and say, no, I want to stay with the organization. Of course, you're not going to settle for any contract extension. And from what I'm hearing, I don't have the full deets on this. It was relatively low. Again, I don't have the full details, but from what I saw, it was somewhat of a low extension offer. Again, I don't know how true that is. Those are just rumors, but it appeared that the Rangers knew what they wanted to do.
Right.
And I think that's what hurts most, is that, yes, you're committed to the rebuild. I get it. And I get here's the thing that kind of bothers me, because when you look at these two deals, and for the Yankees deal, Yankees got Gallo, they got Joely Rodriguez, and then the Rangers basically paid both of their salaries for the rest of the season.
Yep.
The Rangers got from New York, they got a pitcher in Glenn Otto, they got Ezekiel Duran, Josh Smith, and Trevor Hauver. Okay, so Glenn Otto, a lot are thinking that he's going to possibly get into the majors a little bit. Duran is a very highly taught prospect. And then Josh Smith, who I'm hearing was actually rated relatively low, who's a lot better than his rating states. And then Trevor Hauver. So 3 of those 4 guys in the minors, position player, adds your position player depth. But from what I'm hearing, it's going to be a while for some of those guys to get into the majors. What I'm hearing, the target is 2023 to get these things going. But I don't know if these guys will be ready by 2023. That's my personal opinion on there. So, but then you look at the deal with the Phillies. Phillies get Kyle Gibson, Ian Kennedy. They got Hans Kraus. It was a little intriguing to hear Hans Kraus, because the Hans Kraus piece came in later, and a lot of people were like, oh my gosh, we just completely stole this from the Phillies. Right. And then you hear Kraus's name and you're like, okay. And listen, Hans Kraus is, I feel like, a coin flip. You don't know if he's going to thrive to be the player they hope they would, or if he's just one of those guys that just won't take that extra step. It seemed like that was somebody the Phillies really wanted too. Rangers do get the Phillies' number 1 prospect, Spencer Howard, who should be should get more word this week on what the plans are for Howard. He has bullpen session on Sunday. They also got Kevin Gowdy and Aussie Josh Gessner. I just want to throw that out there. That's the second Australian that is in the Arizona Fall League.
That'd be cool.
Hey, we never have enough Aussies.
Absolutely. Liam Hendricks will approve.
Liam Hendricks. And then, of course, not in the league anymore, but Grant Balfour and Ryan Roland Smith. Now, this is the type of deal that I kind of look at and say, okay, I can understand where the 2023 goes, because Spencer Howard,
right?
He's been pitching in the big leagues a little bit, hasn't gotten extended, but you're hoping by 2023 he'll be the starter that the Rangers are hoping for. But this is where that target, I feel conflicted between the two deals.
Right.
Because if 2023 is your target, are you telling me that Joey Gallo is not a part of that?
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with you. That doesn't make a lot of sense, especially when you consider that Gallo was under contract in 2022. And I'll kind of play off of you and give my thoughts on the trade as well, starting with Gallo. Coming into the season, I figured that he was gone, right? I figured that he was gone under the deadline circumstance, under pretty much no matter what the team could do. I expected the team to be playing a little bit better than they are right now. Obviously, that hasn't happened. I expected him to be gone even if the team was playing at a better clip. So theoretically, coming in on opening day, if you would have told me here today that he would have been gone, that would have been no surprise.
Right.
But things change, right? And come June and July, when Joey Gallo is mashing every ball out of the stadium that he's seeing, seemingly, and the team is playing poorly, but he says he wants to stay, that seems like a circumstance that you tap the brakes, right? And I think the reason why the Rangers fans are so upset right now is because the offer from the Yankees on paper is not overwhelming, right? You would think the only circumstance that you trade a guy who's slugging the heck out of the ball, who says he wants to stick around, would be if you get something overwhelming. Well, on paper, they got the 14th, the 17th, the 16th, and the 20th prospects from the Yankees in their top 30, if I'm not mistaken.
They
Something
did a
like that.
reevaluation based on the prospects because that was preseason.
Yes.
So rank within the farm system, Duran was, and this was on the day of the trade. They did a reevaluation. Baseball America did. Duran was ranked 6th, Smith 8th, Otto 20th, Howard 22nd. Now in the Rangers system, Duran's ranked 3rd, Smith 8th, Otto 37th, Howard 31. Again, you're talking about 2 different sites, so 2 different evaluations. But that being said, for Gallo, you still didn't get a top 5 prospect within the Yankee system. And even on the reevaluation.
Right. And that's where it gets ugly. And Alex, you were mentioning John King a couple minutes ago. I believe we were on air. We were off air. I saw a rumor right when the trade was going down that John King was going to New York.
And that's true.
And that might have spiced up the prospect pool a little bit, that might have swayed New York into throwing in a higher level prospect, maybe a major league guy like Clint Frazier or something, who honestly, I thought when I saw Gallo to New York, he was the first guy that I thought of. I thought that he's kind of on the outs in New York. I thought that Texas was going to go for at least one major league level player, but apparently that offer was not good enough. So anyway, all that to say, I completely understand the frustration of the fan because that offer in and of itself on paper is not overwhelming, especially when, as you mentioned, that Texas is taking on all of Gallo and Rodriguez's money for 2021. But then again, New York gets a really elite all-star level player who's been representing the AL in past 2 seasons that he's been healthy for next year under contract that Texas extended him under. I just completely understand why the fan is frustrated over the Gallo trade.
So I just want to kind of answer that because I do have and I don't know how true this was, but when King was a part of it.
Yeah.
The only difference between that was New York had added 2 prospects, but they weren't even, they were the lower end prospects. Everson Pereira and Randy Vasquez, who were ranked lower than the 4 that were originally in that deal. So all that John King essentially provided to that, and I don't know how true that deal was. I don't know if there was still, obviously, it didn't fall through, but from my understanding, it was the only thing that John King had provided is adding 2 additional prospects to the Yankees, and that negated that. As opposed to Joely Rodriguez. Right.
And it was clear that New York was in the market for a lefty. Joely Rodriguez really underperformed this year, in my opinion. ERA was closer to 6. The Rangers aren't losing much in him. And honestly, it kind of surprised me that the Yankees were interested in him. I guess they're just looking for a warm body that's a left-handed pitcher in the bullpen right now. Like, you could see why they would want John King a little more, but it makes sense that why Chris Young and John Daniels didn't want to add that into the trade. But last thing I'll say on the Gallo deal is I remember back in February when I heard that Elvis was getting traded, Elvis Andrus, that is, for those who might not be informed, to Oakland. My first thought was, okay, wow, they are really giving Chris Young a clean slate, right?
Yep.
As after JD, before Chris Young was named GM, I believe that was when Lance Lynn was traded. Obviously, you trade Minor at the deadline. Trading Andrews was the first thing that triggered for me. Okay, they are really giving Chris Young an opportunity to build the team from the bottom up. And I think you just wonder, okay, why didn't you make a move in the offseason, right? If you're going to make a move at the deadline, why, and you're going to give them this clean slate, why do you not make that in the offseason? But it's clear that, JD is kind of sliding into that president's role and taking his hands a little off. And Chris Young saw this trade and obviously Daniels had a lot to do with this, as quantity over quality, right? Cast a wide net. And I think that's where that 6 prospect discussion came into. But the Yankees were clearly dedicated to do whatever it took to get this deal done. And it's going to be hard for Rangers fans to watch Gallo in pinstripes for at least a year and a half. But yeah, it just signals the direction that the Rangers are headed. And now really, I mean, there's no high level talent on the roster, and Chris Young has a complete clean slate to build a roster from the ground up.
It was interesting because the night before, and I had kind of tweeted this out, was the Yankees had made a deal with the Reds. They sent a couple of relievers over to Cincinnati for a player to be named later. And a lot of people were questioning because one of those players was actually Luis Cessa, who was having a good season for the Yankees. So as a Yankee fan, you're like, are we selling?
Yeah.
Which you're like, you're in the thick of a race. You're not selling. Even if you were about 7 games back of the wild card, they're still buying. So I think it kind of clicked in that they needed to leave some room open, leave some bodies open. And that's where New York swooped in. And that could have been one of the things the Rangers would, in kind of the agreement, like, okay, we'll give you Joely Rodriguez too. Right. And that could have been the instance. So that was a bit curious, but that kind of clicked, opened the light bulb and just kind of clicked. And it was like, okay, that from a Yankees perspective, that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And I don't know exactly what will happen. I just think from an ownership standpoint regarding, you have a player a player to Joey's caliber, because what essentially as a position player are you going to be looking for? You're going to be looking for a player that is similar to what Joey Gallo does on the field. Exactly. Well, you're looking for that, and yet you have him right in front of you.
Right. And I think that Rangers fans can relate to Chicago Cubs fans a lot.
Oh,
right
my
now,
goodness.
They hit a hard reset button, but at the same time, obviously, they're not going to sign all 4 of those guys back, right? I mean, they probably, I was a bit surprised they don't Javier Baez. I thought that maybe they could have sat down and negotiated with him. And I thought that Chris Bryant was way too much of a fan favorite to trade, having gone to college in the Midwest and seen how people from Chicago adore Chris Bryant and Anthony Rizzo, to be fair.
Oh yeah.
But I thought maybe Bryant and Rizzo, or Bryant and Baez, were 2 players in that same column that you talked about, Alex, where, okay, you're looking for a player that's going to replace this player theoretically, but you've got one right in front of you, right? I totally understand where Rangers fans are frustrated on that. And yeah, Gallo is a unicorn, right? There's not going to be a whole lot of players that are as 3 true outcome as him. The only one I can think of in the major leagues right now is Matt Olson of the A's, who is a big home run walker strikeout guy. And who, unfortunately, the Rangers are going to see many times over years to come. He's probably
Aaron Judge in that same lineup.
It's another guy, and he's going to be sharing that outfield with Gallo, probably playing a little center field, alternating with Joey in center and right. So that'll be the Yankees outfield is very, very impressive when you mix in Clint Frazier and Brett Gardner in that group as well. But yeah, I was kind of all over the place there, but I completely relate to you in that vein that you mentioned. Yeah.
I want to use 2 teams as an example. You look back when the Kansas City Royals had their streak, right, or had their good seasons, and you think about Alex Gordon.
Mm-hmm.
They never let go of Alex Gordon. They kept him through the bad years. Astros, Jose Altuve.
Yep.
The same thing. And then even Ranger fans will relate this. Michael Young.
Yep.
You have that one player, and you kind of felt like, okay, with Elvis going, with Odor going, you figure, okay, Joey Gallo is that guy.
Right.
And now I understand if if you felt like you were going to get a great deal, and who knows, maybe all 4 of these guys flourish. You can't make that distinction now, just kind of based on a business decision.
Right.
It just doesn't seem, you can't evaluate are these guys going to be or not.
Exactly. And we've seen a lot of people comparing this to what could be the Mark Teixeira trade, right? In 2007, you ship a guy off who ended up being a season and a half long rental, and you get 5 pieces back that turn out to be an integral
Yeah.
part of 2 World Series runs. That is absolutely in the cards here. You have to give them that. Baseball is not a game where you can assume things. You're absolutely right in that. But I totally understand how the Ranger fan is really disappointed in how things worked out. And I think the frustrating thing for me is, you look at a guy who says, I check my phone every day and hope that I'm a Ranger and I want to be here and this is where I want to play. I think the optics of shipping that guy out when you could have done it a while ago, when those things didn't arise, just looks so bad to the casual fan, right?
And what does that say for free agents if you're trying to bring in?
And when you're trotting out a team with a $25 million active payroll right now, which is among the bottom 5 teams in the league, despite having a budget that's in the top 15 league, I believe. I totally understand the frustration of the casual fan. There were a lot of things that could have been done differently, and now it's just a waiting game, right? Now it's just waiting to see how long Joey stays with the Yankees. Now it's waiting to see what happens with Glenn Otto, and I totally understand if Rangers fans' head are spinning after this week with Gallo, because my head is, and I cannot believe that he's not playing for the Rangers, honestly. I mean, just going back and thinking back to his first game against the White Sox in 2015 and him hitting that massive home run, and there's just so much excitement there, and just the Rangers fans getting word of, oh yeah, we got a guy from the Bryant Harper,
Trio.
Las Vegas tree. Yeah, we got a guy out of that. He's coming up, and he strikes out a lot, but he hits these massive home runs, and he hit one out of the park in Frisco at Dr. Pepper Ballpark, and seeing him flourish over 7 years and turn into a captain and a fan favorite and just a great personality. And I know that you know that better than anybody, just having interacted with him in person so much. This one really hurts. There's no other way around it. The Rangers have made some deadline moves that have really hurt you, Darvish, in 2017. That one stung. I think this one hurts a little more.
I think just overall, just based on the character he was, how much the fans loved, and Mark Teixeira. Yes, I can kind of see those comparisons, but again, at the same time, you also are dealing with, again, a Gold Glover in the outfield too.
Right.
And listen, like if the timelines again just don't add up. If you're looking at like, well, give it maybe it is going to be 5 years. I don't know, but based on what management has said, I'm going based on what you're telling me. So like I can think of 10 totally different things, but I'm going based on what you're telling me. And if you're thinking 2023, yes, Gallo's going to be a free agent at that time, but he's only going to be 29.
Right.
I mean, it's not like he's not like he's Kyle Gibson. And I'll give this with Kyle Gibson. I feel like veteran starting pitchers are like this. Nothing against Gibson. Gibson had a fantastic year. It's all-star deserving. And it kind of segues into the second deal where I think this is the most you're going to get out of Gibson as far as value goes. And I keep thinking about 2 years ago, Rangers were in this situation consecutive years. 2019, Mike Minor. They didn't deal him. And then they ended up dealing him the following season. You didn't get the value you wanted because he struggled in 2020. So I can understand that the Rangers would jump the gun on there because you've already been down that road before. They got lucky with Lance Lynn. Not saying Lance Lynn's not good, but there's so many factors that can go in from having a good season or a bad season, especially in 2020. So with Lance Lynn, they got lucky. I felt like that Lynn had a really good season. And so I figured they're not going to make that mistake again. Obviously, Ian Kennedy, everybody needs a bullpen piece. Kennedy is going to be gone. And then, of course, I think the Phillies looked at there saying, we want Hans Kraus if you guys get Spencer Howard.
Right.
And the one nice thing about Howard is that he has big league experience. He's had, hasn't had much big league experience, but he's had experience.
Exactly.
So you've already got that ledger. So I'm about 50-50 on this. Again, it'll be dependent on how Spencer Howard performs in order to really evaluate this trade. And then you got 2 other arms.
Right. I agree with a lot of what you said there, Alex, especially the part about you really felt like this deadline was JD and Chris Young kind of repenting for the sins of the years past at the deadline, right? The 2020 in action. I mean, I really don't see what ended up being 3 starts of Lance Lynn. Who knows what they could have gotten back in exchange for him last year that would help the franchise, right? But that's not, as Wash would say, that's not the way baseball go, right? That's not the way that works. We can't go back in hindsight. And then you mentioned Minor, how badly the Yankees wanted him in 2019, and the Rangers chose to hold on to him. He ended up finishing the year really strong in 2019 and almost won a Cy Young out of it. But the team's offense collapsed, right, and missed what could have been a wild card spot. And that's something that also gets overlooked. It's just how quickly they have fallen out of competition, because in 2019, they were 10 games above 500 in July.
They were tied for the top wildcard spot in late June.
Yep. I'll never forget that, because that feels like that was a long way away. Feels like that's a long way away from where they're at right now. But yeah, I totally agree with you. I felt like this deadline was JD and Chris Young making up for those past 2 deadlines, right? They knew that the fan base was not going to tolerate them sitting on Kyle Gibson and Ian Kennedy. Right. And like you said, I was among the first doubters of Kyle Gibson coming into 2021. But I am a big fan of not only just the way he carries himself and the way that he interacts with his family. And I know that he did a podcast with you last year promoting his charity. And I'm really thankful for the year that he spent in Texas, because it was a huge net plus, in my opinion. That was a guy who you mentioned. He's kind of peaking in his career, right? He's on the wrong side of a $10 million contract next year. I totally think that the Rangers had to move that contract. And then the Ian Kennedy side, that is a huge
That's a steal.
Win. That is a huge win for Chris Young and John Daniels. And, you look over the past couple seasons, and they have been able to find guys like him. They've been able to find guys like Hunter Pence, who came in and put up almost a 3-WAR first half in 2019. They've been able to find guys like Ian Kennedy and Adolis Garcia, just these little diamonds in the rough with 1-year contracts. I think that's something that this franchise is going to need to get out of the muck and the mire. But Kennedy, the backstory with him, honestly makes it even a cooler story, that Chris Young knew him from his time playing for the Royals, and that the Rangers knew that they were going to need some veteran leadership in spring training, and that Kennedy was one of his first calls. You turn that guy into 16 of 17 saves, probably could have been an all-star, and you throw him in as a nice piece in a trade deadline deal. That is a massive win. And I think that the fans don't need to overlook that, because Philly is getting a good bullpen piece for them. And obviously Kyle Gibson, he made his first start the day that we're recording this, and he went 6 2/3 with, not striking out a lot of batters, pitching to contact. He's a ground baller. Rangers fans know what he's going to bring. But the thing that really interested me was he got 4 at-bats and he scored a run in his first game as a National League pitcher after all those years with Minnesota and the Rangers. So I just think that's really interesting. And that doesn't surprise me at all, that after struggling a little bit, that he went to Philly, changed leagues, and seemingly has picked up right where he left off. So I certainly wish them the best. Feel a lot better about the Kyle Gibson and Ian Kennedy trade than I do the Joey Gallo trade, obviously. You mentioned Spencer Howard a lot. I totally agree with a lot of the points that you made. He had 7 starts this season, so we're probably going to see him take a lot of starts in 2021 as well for the Rangers. It's been a mixed bag in the major leagues, but I think one thing that we need to realize is that he's the number 1 prospect from a fairly weak farm system.
Yeah.
And you can't get too jaded over that. But, Dane Dunning is developing very nicely. And if you can throw him in a rotation with Dane Dunning, those are 2 really nice pieces. And Lord knows, after trading Joey Gallo, you've got the budget to go ahead and sign a big name starting pitcher. So there you go. You're 3/5 on the way to a very nice rotation. And then you throw in Hans Cruz, who could have been a part of that young group. But, I totally get the fans' frustrations with seeing Hans Cruz walk out the door. But to be fair, it is a position, especially after signing Jack Leiter, that the Rangers are very deep at. Right.
Yeah.
Excuse me. You got Reagans, you got Wynn, you've got Leiter, and then you had Cruz, but you let him go, and you still got so much depth. And I kind of see where JD and Chris Young were getting at. If Philly had to have them to part ways, at least you're losing a player that's toward the bottom of your depth in a position that you're deepest at in your farm system.
I just want to point out that for Kyle Gibson, does score a run. I'm sure, I don't know this firsthand, but I'm sure he's happy that he's hitting. That's something that he's always liked. So I'm just happy that he gets have more of those opportunities.
Well, maybe he can tell his grandkids, like, hey, I got traded to the National League for the last 2 months that they had the designated hitter, right?
There you go.
It's certainly a discussion. You and I can get to that in an off-season episode for sure, the entirety of that debate. But I think that's a very real possibility for him. And if that's the case, then good for him, because he was a fan favorite in Minnesota. And I remember hearing very good things about him when the Rangers signed him, as far as the, personality wise. And that proved to be the case. And I'm really glad that the Rangers were able to move him and get some kind of value.
I do want to point out also that Kyle Gibson was originally, for those that don't know, he was originally drafted out of high school by the Philadelphia Phillies and then went to Missouri.
Yep. My alma mater.
There you go. See, we have connections all throughout. Yep. Gibson originally was going to go to the Phillies, does not, goes to Mizzou, and then gets drafted by the Twins out of college.
But in all seriousness, my alma mater is filling up a very good rotation of MLB starters who are active. You got Tanner Houck from the Red Sox, who was there when I was there. He was a stud. He was the Friday night guy. He was the ace for the Missouri Tigers my first year on campus. Then you got Max Scherzer, who's on a Hall of Fame trajectory, now a Los Angeles Dodger. Then you throw in Kyle Gibson, who's now an all-star. That's a really solid alma mater rotation of active MLB players. I don't know. There's a lot of schools who could also claim that. So that's something
Vanderbilt.
Yeah, of course. Can we set Vanderbilt aside? Right. That
go.
Is a completely different...
You didn't disclose.
Yeah, that's SEC competition, but that's a completely different situation. But yeah, Mizzou is very proud to claim Kyle Gibson, especially when he was in the All-Star game.
So overall, what would you say on this trade deadline? Do you feel like it was, under what the organization wanted to do? They wanted to bulk up their farm system. They wanted to kind of take off some financial burdens. They did that.
Yes, they did bulk it up.
But I guess it's hard to grade this trade deadline because you don't know what these guys are going to turn into. But do you feel like, just from an initial look at?
Yeah. If I'm giving a grade out, I say the Kyle Gibson trade is a B. And I'll give the Joey Gallo trade a C-. I think it just barely passes for me for overall a C+ deadline. I think there's a lot of things that they could have done differently. And for me, the thing that's drawing you back is the timing.
Yeah.
Right. I think you could have made the Gallo move in the offseason if you knew that you were going to make it this year or at the deadline last year. And as you mentioned, they did what they accomplished, right? They wanted to bulk up the farm system. They now have 6 guys that they've added from top 30 prospect pools from 2 different teams that are winning right now in the major leagues, 2 kind of iffy farm systems. But they definitely did what they accomplished, and they shaved off a lot of the budget. They'll definitely have some money to spend when this team does get to a point where they can start winning again. You mentioned around 2023. I think for Rangers fans, if you're looking for an expectation, I think you should expect the 2022 season, unfortunately, to resemble something a little bit like this year. But then you never know. Come 2023, the Rangers.
You never know. Even next year, you don't know. Some of these guys getting a little bit more time in the big leagues, making some adjustments. Who knows?
Right.
And then also, hey, I find it funny, on the same day Joey Gallo gets traded, what was it, about 6 hours earlier, they signed Jack Leiter.
Yep. It's like one door opens, another closes.
We're gonna distract you from this trade to tell you we signed Jack Leiter.
Yes, that is the best thing that the franchise has done, honestly, in my opinion, since signing Hunter Pence.
Hey, what? Hunter Pence, even in his 1 year, and that's, I guess, one of the other deals, because I remembered Hunter Pence being on the trade market. They didn't deal him, and there was some question whether or not.
Right.
But I don't think you can replace the character of Hunter Pence.
Definitely not.
1 year. 1 year already made his mark in the organization.
I think that one of my regrets as a Rangers fan is one time I was at the old ballpark and I saw a Hunter Pence shirt on sale, and I was a college kid at the time, so I had a pretty thin budget and I wanted it so badly, and I talked myself out of it, and I said, okay, if he makes the All-Star team, then I'll get one. Sure enough, he made the All-Star team. I still didn't get one. I really regret passing up both of those opportunities because he turned into one of my all-time favorite Rangers just for 3/4 of the season.
he's an all-time favorite just as a person.
Yeah.
Just as a person.
Yeah. And I'm not giving him enough credit. I think that assigning Adolis Garcia is also a move that's going to send this franchise on a positive trajectory. And it's his team now, but it's Jack Leiter's franchise. He is the line at the end of the tunnel. I watch a lot of college baseball. I cover some college baseball, as I mentioned, in my time at Missouri. And Leiter was a guy that from day one, if you watched anything in college baseball, that you knew he was the can't miss guy. And the Rangers were, in my opinion, the only team that walked away with an A+ in the 2021 draft, just because there is no talent like they got in the 2021 draft. And that is Jack Leiter's ceiling. Just a wonderful 5-pitch mix, a lot of velocity, great arm angle, just a premium experience at Vanderbilt pitching in high leverage situations. And he basically just has given you everything that you could want in the amateur level. Now he's going to go to school this year. He's not going to pitch professionally, which I do not think is a bad move at all. Rest that elbow, let him recover after pitching deep into back-to-back or pitching into the College World Series. It's a lot of taxing on the arm. I don't think he needs a professional season year one. He's clearly got a good head on his shoulders. And I just think that I'm just so happy he's a Ranger. I mean, it's a great fit. And I thought that on day one of draft day, that with all the rumors that he was going to slip to Boston, that we were going to be set up for some disappointment. But instead, the Rangers have a beacon of hope, and they certainly had to pay for it, as I'm sure we'll discuss in a moment, with that $8 million signing bonus. But Rangers fans, just hold tight, because he very, very likely is going to be worth it.
Well, it's interesting then, because with the draft signing deadline already passed, his teammate, Kumar Rocker, did not get signed. Now, of course, there's medical instances that pertain to that, but being a club who at this point would likely be the number 2, I'd have to check and see how the Orioles did, but let's say 2 or 3. There's a possibility that if everything goes well with Kumar Rocker, if there's no injury issues that are going, that you could very well wind up with a Vandy duo on the Rangers.
Right. I think, another likely scenario is that Kumar goes back to school and is able to stay healthy, and Texas maybe grabs him in the second round. Right. That's absolutely a possibility. I hate it for him, because Kumar's got a great head on his shoulder, and he's shown the same kind of ability that Jack Leiter has to pitch in high leverage situations. I've written several articles in DallasSportsFanatic.com and talked about, just some conjecture over the past couple of years and months when the Rangers looked like they were going to be in position to take one of these guys, as to that great Rocker versus Leiter debate, right? And especially coming down to the end, for me, it was a non-question. It was a non-factor, right? Rocker, it was always going to be Leiter over Rocker. So that's another reason why I'm really thankful that the Rangers got him. I think if you can go back to Vanderbilt and learn another pitch, that would also help him a lot. That was something that, for me personally, kind of pushed me away from him at number 2 for the Rangers. But yeah, his ceiling is still very high. And it was interesting that he fell that low to the Mets overall. But yeah, that's definitely a possibility for the Rangers next go around. And this team's going to be looking at another high draft pick. It's going to be top 3 at least. And now for the Rangers, Diamondbacks, and Orioles, it's just a race to get that number 1 pick for the rest of the season.
It'll be intriguing to see how that goes. And then just looking as far as the news today, 18 of the 20 draft picks signed. It was a little curious on Aaron Zavala, who signed $1 million under the slot bonus. And of course, there was some medical issues that were going on there that were reported after the fact. But I mean, honestly, 18 of 20 is a pretty good percentage. And one of those that didn't sign, I mean, we already knew that was gonna happen.
Yeah. Will Taylor with Dabo Sweeney and company in Clemson University. I mean,
come on, you'd say I have an opportunity to play at Clemson, or to start off in the minor leagues.
Yeah.
Clemson, no offense, But
yeah, he's going to make a little more money off that that name, image, and likeness than he would in the minor leagues. I can't blame him at all. But yeah, that is a very good draft for the Rangers. And as I mentioned, I give them an A+ just because of who they took at number 1. But there are also some really nice picks in the 2nd through 20th rounds, as you mentioned. And signing 18 of those guys is a really good thing. And that's something that the casual fan is going to miss. Right. Yeah. They're only going to see the franchise trading Joey Gallo and only spending $25 million on the team and get really frustrated. But, JD has had a very good track record of bringing prospects to Texas. And there's been a very low failure rate of prospects to sign. And obviously, like you saw Kumar Rocker today, that's a disaster when it doesn't happen. It doesn't look good at all. And it can be a big mess. But they have certainly found a niche in drafting and developing players. And unfortunately, the trend has been shipping them off, but also they have found a really good niche in getting guys at very valuable contracts like Hunter Pence, like Adolis Garcia and the like, and working those guys in. So it'll be really interesting for me to see how these draft picks eventually work their way into the Texas farm system. And, as the Rangers farm system continues to rise, it's going to be really interesting to see the battles, right, for the top 30, right? There could be some competition within, and maybe we see the Rangers return to a spot where they once had the first ranked prospect pool in baseball back when this team was competing for World Series.
It's interesting as far as a position battle goes. How about catcher?
Yeah.
How about catcher? Jonah Heim, Jose Trevigno, and then you have Sam Huff waiting.
Right.
I mean, just even going back the last 2 days, Rangers took the series 2 of 3 from the playoff Seattle Mariners, who are in a playoff hunt, thanks to 2 walk-off homers back-to-back by Jonah Heim, first rookie to ever do that, and first player since Albert Pujols in 2011 to do that. Whenever you could say that you're the first player when it regards homers and Albert Pujols back in his prime, I'll take that.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty cool for Jonah Heim. And, for those who might not know, he was kind of just a throw-in guy with the Elvis Andrus trade, right? The trade was certainly not centered around him, but the Rangers need a backup catcher after Jeff Mathis packed his bags. And, Heim is certainly not as good defensively as him, but he can hit for power. It's certainly there in that bat. And clubhouse seems to really like him as well. And he seems like he could be a formidable option behind the plate. And I think it was just good for this team to get something going its way this weekend, right? You needed to win a series like that over a team in Seattle, nonetheless, who's trying to push for its first playoff spot since 2001. So, they're 6 games over 500. That's big for the Rangers to get a win over that group. And it's now for the rest of 2021, right? It's going to need somebody to step up and take control of the clubhouse. And I think seeing something like that go right is going to help them a long way as far as morale goes and trying to finish the season strong.
Do you think as a young team, when you see the success that Joey Gallo has and the type of player he is and what he brings to the table, that sometimes you could get a little lax in thinking, okay, Joey's going to just take over the team. Whereas now that he's gone, oh boy, all of our performances now get put into a microscope. And I also feel like just the weight of the trade deadline alone, I know some guys are like, I'm not getting traded, but just the weight of that ending and being able to now, okay, it's go time. Let's finish out this season. I think you're also seeing that over the course of, because I think Friday's instance, Wednesday's game and Friday's game were both in just shock. Just like it happened. I mean, these are professional athletes. It's going to happen. Trades are going to happen. But to see someone that you've connected in, even in Kyle Gibson for 2 years, because you think about in the COVID scenario, when you're on the road, these are the guys you're with for months and months. You can't go anywhere else. And so that's why I feel like the players that you're with in 2020, they mean so much more to you because these guys are around and you have no choice.
Right. That's well put. And, one guy that I see possibly filling that void is Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, right? Since Gallo's been traded, you've seen him on a lot more of the Rangers media kits. And, promotional materials and stuff like that. And that makes sense, right? He is another win for John Daniels and the Rangers brass, just finding him in, what was it, the 5th round of, I think it was the 2013 draft or something like that, developing through your prospects system and then just keeping him kind of at bay at Round Rock, not really a highly regarded prospect at all, but suddenly he turns into this Swiss Army knife, right? That's behind the plate catching games for the Rangers. And correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, I don't think we've seen him behind the dish this year, but I don't think that's out of the possibility for the future. I think that he's one of those guys that just because of his story, just because of the leadership role that he's taken on, that can easily fill that Gallo void and kind of grab the attention in the clubhouse in that kind of, oh, wow, Gallo is gone. Who do we look to now moment?
I think two guys stand out. And for Isaiah Kenner-Falefa, I think the only reason he would be behind the plate is for emergency purposes.
Yes.
If something happens to Heim, if something happens, I don't know who technically who their designated emergency catcher is, but I would think it would be Isaiah just because he's played the position.
Right.
He's not touted as a catcher, but he has played the position. And if something happens to Heim and Trevigno, it makes sense. Right. You don't want to take that away. You don't want to take away a Gold Glover at third, move to short, and a possible Gold Glover at short away. Right. But if you absolutely had to, then. So with that said, I wouldn't see Isaiah. To be honest, I wouldn't see Isaiah catch for the rest of his career.
Yeah, it is pretty cool that he can put that on his resume, though.
Yeah,
come up as a kind of backup catcher, shortstop hybrid. You never see those.
And then with another face that you're starting to think is Jose Trevigno, who's putting that on his back and putting not only just from an offensive standpoint, but putting the pitching staff on their back. And you're talking about two excellent framers in Trevigno and in Heim, top framers in all of baseball. And especially now that you're working with young pitchers, you're starting to see them getting comfortable. Another name that when we talk about rotation, if he can get going and show a little bit more consistency, I mean, the bar is set high for Taylor Hearn.
Yes. And funny thing, I don't think I've ever mentioned this to you before. I graduated high school with Taylor Hearn's sister. So, and I got married in Royce City, where Taylor Hearn is from. So I feel a special connection with him. And I wish him I wish him a lot of success in the major leagues just because he is from right in my backyard. But I don't know if that's interesting to the podcast listener, but I felt inclined to bring it up. But yeah, no, I absolutely.
I'll bring it up to her.
There you go. Right. Yeah, no, he could be a piece that the Rangers like in the rotation. And it could be something like we saw yesterday, right, where he just goes 3 2/3, right? The tandem role, kind of what we've seen with Jordan Lyles, where he throws 75 pitches. That's something I could totally see working. Could also see a situation where Hearn gets an opener, right? That fad has kind of died down in Major League Baseball, but it seemed like he's the kind of player that it seems like it could work for, right? And you look at the numbers, a 4.01 ERA, I think that was his number coming into his last start. That's pretty respectable, all things considered. And I totally agree with you that the Rangers like what they've seen with him working mostly out of the bullpen this year. And I'm looking forward to see what he can do in the rotation in the second half.
Rangers month of July, the Rangers player of the month for the month of July, by the way, ERA under 1 in the month of July, appeared in 8 games. So
Taylor Hearn?
Yes, Taylor Hearn had a really good month. I know. I no offense to Hearn. When I was looking at there was like thinking of players, and this was voted amongst, and then he was in my month of July as well, player of the month. When I was going through, I was like kind of looking, because offensively, obviously it's gonna hard to find somebody that hasn't been a good offensive month. But then going through the pitching, you realize, oh my goodness, Taylor Hearn's having a really good month. And just nobody kind of knew about it.
Right. And he looks really comfortable, I think, for the first time in his big league career on the mound, right? He kind of has been rushed up. I believe his debut was last year, if I'm not mistaken,
2019. He had one start and then a third of an inning. It was not good.
Yeah. So see, that is the ultimate getting rushed to the big leagues, right? And he did not look very comfortable. And I think his kind of struggles last year and early this year were part of that. But now you've got almost 3 big league seasons under your belt. The franchise is thought highly enough of you to move you into the rotation. You're probably feeling pretty good about yourself, right? And I think you're seeing some of that confidence kind of spill over. So that makes a lot of sense, and I think he's another player that the Rangers can be excited about.
So let me ask you this: for Hearn, do you put him in the rotation or do you put him in the bullpen? Where do you think he's best suited?
Yeah, I think a rotation with he, Dane Dunning, Jordan Lyles, Spencer Howard, and Mike Foltynewicz. Although, as respectable as they are as human beings, like it's just my opinion. I don't think that Jordan Lyles and Mike Foltynewicz are major league caliber pitchers right now. And Lyles, maybe more so, he's put together some pretty good starts recently, but Foltynewicz with 10 losses and a 6.11 ERA, I wouldn't be surprised if the Rangers possibly move on to from that sooner or later. So I think that even more solidifies Taylor Hearn's spot in the rotation.
I can understand in the next few weeks sticking with Foltynewicz and just thinking about, because again, it's a lost season.
They need somebody to eat innings.
Yeah. I mean, so let's put him in there. But yeah, I mean, I can understand that, Treadwell, and just kind of deciding what you want to do, and then of course in the tandem with Spencer Howard, do you do that? There hasn't been a clear designation of Spencer Howard. He had his bullpen session today, so I'm not quite sure what the plan's going to be for Howard, but I would say regarding, they're not going to let him go 5-6 innings.
And and he's something, I believe it was you on Twitter. It was several Rangers media brass also pointed out how excited Spencer Howard is to be here. And he's kind of got some of that California surfer dude attitude to him as well, which there's nothing wrong with that at all. That's a very likable and agreeable personality. But he does seem pretty excited to be here, which I think he was. When you bring that morale into a clubhouse and you give that guy the confidence of, hey, you were Philly's number one guy. We wanted you, right? He saw the trade. He saw that the Rangers threw in a top 10 prospect to get him. And I think bringing that kind of personality into a clubhouse is going to be huge, right? And he's going to be somebody that's very agreeable. And you put that guy in the middle of your rotation with Dane Dunning, it could really work.
I think outside of Drew Anderson, he said that he had not known any other person on that roster.
Right.
So even to show that excitement, and I don't know if there was any sort of nervousness or fear into that excitement. I mean, I could totally see that, especially being touted as a top prospect in another team's organization's farm system. But no, I mean, it was legit. Like he had a smile on his face. He had the excitement eyes, and he went on, like, I would say about 10, 12 times. I am excited to be here. And you could just see it when he's saying it. Either that or he deserves an Oscar as an actor. I mean, that's the only other logical explanation. Either he's really, really pumped to be here, or he's a really good actor.
Right. And that's something that the Rangers need right now. They need good news like that. And I am glad that the Rangers were able to bring him on. They might have overpaid a little bit for him, but you know what? That's something that the Rangers need right now.
And again, like, it's a coin flip with Hans Kraus. You don't know if he was going to be major league caliber. He was doing pretty good in Double-A Frisco, never pitched in Triple-A, never pitched in the majors. It's literally a toss and a flip of a coin. At least that with Spencer Howard. He has pitched in the majors, so he knows somewhat what to expect. And then one guy we haven't really talked about into the rotation, unless you did, and I completely missed it, which is also a possibility, Colby Allard.
Yeah.
And Allard's been up and down. I feel like Allard in his start against the Blue Jays didn't get the lucky bats. The problem with Colby Allard has been the big inning. He just hasn't, when it snowballs, it snowballs.
Right.
And that's something that the Rangers have tried to work on it and try to help him through. I don't know this year. I will say this for the rest of the year. I still think you fit Colby Allard in the rotation, give him some work, see what he could do. But as for the future, I'm not 100% sure.
Absolutely. And, like we keep on circling back to that point, right? The Rangers just need somebody to eat innings, and Colby Allard will be good at that. Over the past 5 starts or so, I've started to notice the ERA go up and up and up. And, that's not necessarily a fault of his own. ERA isn't a perfect statistic, and neither is the win-loss record, which I don't think indicates as good or as bad as the pitcher has been. But he was a guy for a couple of weeks that you could rely on. That guy's going to go out there and give you 5 innings. He's going to allow 3 or 4 runs, and he's going to give you a chance if your offense can put runs on the board, which we're past that point where the offense was just historically bad. They seem to have gotten that out of their system, which is a good thing, because certainly I don't want to discuss that any more than we have to. That was a hard time to be a Rangers fan over that stretch. They seem to have finally moved past that and been able to put some runs on the board thanks to Jonah Heim this weekend. But if you can get some run support, Colby Howard's a guy who can win you a game or two.
And speaking of Colby Allard, my this week's Rangers 7 guest was Mr. Allard himself. I'll tell you what, the kid, I still call him a kid. He's relatively young too.
Yeah.
I think he's like 23. I mean, he's been in the league, and actually the Rangers did acquire him a couple of years ago from the Atlanta Braves. You remember Chris Martin?
Oh yeah. Arlington product.
So they acquired him from Atlanta, but I kind of chatted up with Colby Allard on this edition of Rangers 7. Here with Colby Allard for Rangers 7. So Colby, I'm going to ask 7 random questions.
Okay.
First one is, what is the strangest baseball ritual you've ever seen in your time playing?
Oh, strangest baseball ritual. A lot of guys surprisingly will wear the same underwear, the same socks for a lot of years in a row, so we could just roll with that.
A lot of years as in like the same every single...
Yeah, I mean, they'll be washed, of course, but yeah, I've seen that go for quite a few, too many years. So we'll roll with that one, yeah.
What is unpopular food opinion that you have?
Unpopular food opinion. I don't know if it's super unpopular, but I could probably eat a pizza every day.
Okay. Any specific?
No, I gotta mix them up. Change them up. Buffalo chicken, pepperoni, bacon, mix the cheese in there.
Placing specifically? Or just whatever?
Mellow mushroom, or our boys in the kitchen in there.
Oh, nice.
They fire up some unbelievable pies.
I've heard some good things about that.
Yes, give them a little shout out. Give the cooks a shout out.
And so what is your go-to meal then?
Ooh, go-to meal?
So let's say like you don't have to pay anything. What's your...
Yeah, I'm probably going to go with a buffalo chicken pizza from Mellow Mushroom would probably be my go-to. If we're not trying to go the healthy route, that's probably
hey,
going to be the go-to.
It's whatever you want on your plate, so you can go whatever what you want.
Sir. We'll roll with that.
What is a song on your playlist that you have that people wouldn't expect to hear?
That's a good question. I could get down to some Miley Cyrus. I don't know exactly the situation or the song that might be in there, but maybe Miley Cyrus involved. It's probably on there.
The old school or new school Miley Cyrus?
Ooh, probably old school. Gonna have to go with old school.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes, sir.
What is a TV show that you used to watch or watch that would surprise people?
I don't know. I'm honestly not super into TV, to be honest with you. A little bit more of a, in-person type. I don't watch a lot of shows. So yeah, I'm gonna have to pass with you on that one. I'm not.
Or like growing up.
I was a big SpongeBob guy as a kid. I mean, if that has anything to do with it.
Yeah. Old school SpongeBob.
Old school SpongeBob. I'm with you. OG SpongeBob. I can roll with you on that.
Colby, who's low key funny on the team?
Low key funny.
Who are you exposing? That's humorous.
I don't know. Let's see. I'll throw Jonah Heim out there as low key. Not a ton of guys might see it. He's got some good one-liners in there. Yeah, I'll throw Jonah in there.
Okay, so now that speaking of Heim.
Okay.
Thinking of Heim, Culberson, Eli, maybe even Joey, but
Heim, Culberson.
Best hair.
She's got to throw Fulte in there too.
Yes, Fulte.
Fulte's getting Fulte.
It's a shame that I did that.
Shoot, I don't know. I don't know if anyone can give Charlie a run for his money. He looks good, which seems to be 100% of the time. Even when I knew him in Atlanta, so I'm gonna have to go with Charlie.
I'm asking because I need to know who to staple off so I can model it a little
exactly.
bit.
Yes, I'm gonna have to say Charlie.
And lastly, so I'm going clubbing and I need a wingman.
Oh.
Who are you recommending?
Good wingman? I don't know. I'll give you... I've never seen Brock Holt be a wingman, but I'd say that guy would be a pretty darn good wingman. Just personality-wise, so I'll give you B. Holt.
Colby, Thank you so much,
Yes, of
man.
course,
Appreciate it.
For sure.
All right. Appreciate the time for Colby Allard. And looking ahead to what's upcoming this week, they got a 4-game series against the LA Angels. I am hearing that they may miss Shohei Ohtani as far as on the mound goes. And because he's dealing with a thumb issue. I'm not quite sure about the hitter Shohei Ohtani, if they're just going to give him a full rest. But I know that they're aiming at either Thursday, and if it's not Thursday, then the Rangers are going to miss him during that span.
Yeah.
So the Rangers may catch a break to avoid
really
Shohei
might.
Ohtani.
And they can really rub some salt in a wound to an Angels team that, I mean, they badly need wins, not just to stay in the wild card race, which they're not really in anyway, but just to stay above 500. And it is unbelievable that, although Trout has been injured this year, it is unbelievable that with a team as talented as they are, that they cannot seem to stay over 500. And I think if you're the Rangers, you know, you're getting 5th place in this division this year. It's big for you to be the spoiler of the party, right? So if they can take a series against LA, send them to a 4 games below 500 grave of mediocrity, I think that would be something that is big for this team's morale. And I keep on kind of circling back to that point, but when you're losing like they are, it is a huge factor.
Oh yeah, I mean, even seeing the last few days, just how the excitement that has gone in and just the absolute just delight that's going. And when you talk about spoilers, I mean, you look at the AL East race, they don't play Tampa Bay, but they do have a series against Boston. They have a series against New York, albeit on the road. And then they even have the 3 teams we mentioned who will probably be at the top of the draft, still have a series against Baltimore. And they still have a series against Arizona if you want to go the other way around. But I mean, I was talking to Steve last week, and you know, talking about the Diamondbacks and then talking about the Rangers. Listen, like, the one thing you could talk about the Rangers all you want, how much they've struggled and how much, you know, they haven't played well. I'm sure everybody will say that, but you can't question the effort or at least the desire to win from these guys. And I think that there's a difference. There's a huge difference. I think from what Chris Woodward, there was only really 1 game this year that effort was questioned by him. And that was the 14-0 loss against Detroit. And then once that message was, I mean, they didn't score for 4 innings in the next game. It kind of felt like everything was piling up again. They continued, they still lost. They still got swept by Detroit. They still got swept by the Astros, but you could see that effort changed. And at least I could see it. I don't know how the public saw it, but you could sense that there was that 1 game. It just felt like there's just not much effort. And once that message was received, you could tell it was received overnight.
Right. And it was big for them to break the 12-game losing streak too. I think that kind of got away from them very quickly, especially considering that they had a break in the middle of it for the All-Star game. And I completely agree with you there. That was the only factor. And you go back to the one player who you could not question the effort of in that game, that 14-0 loss, it was Joey Gallo, right? Who had a couple of outfield assists. So it's going to be big to see who picks up the void. And we talked about it earlier, but yeah, it's fascinating. One thing I did want to bring up to you, Alex, and you've done a great job hosting the episode, but I want to throw a question at you before we wrap up. Something I saw on Twitter, and obviously take that with a grain of salt. That is right. That is the least credible source in the world. Sometimes you could argue it's less credible than Facebook, which is pretty low on the credibility scale, but I digress. Two things I want to ask you. One, Nick Solak down at AAA has hit the ball really well. He's almost batting 500. Do you think that he rejoins the Rangers roster sooner than later? And then 2, the Tigers DFA'd and released Nomar Mazara this past week. There are rumblings that the Rangers could possibly take a flyer on Mazara for the rest of the season and plug him into Gallo's spot in right field. Do you see any chance of that happening? Have you heard any possibility of that happening?
Hearing about Mazara, no, I haven't. As far
that
as
might have been a way out of left field thing, but it was just referring to how far he's fallen, right? Since he was one of the Rangers' top prospects and had such a kind of hit his ceiling, right, in his early 20s. But just curious to bounce that off of you and the fans.
As far as should should they take a chance? The only thing is that when you look at the outfield, and from what I'm hearing, they still think Willie Calhoun will get some at bats this year. Late September, it'll be a while. But you've got Dahl. Well, I'll say this: Adolis Garcia, you want him to play in right. That's
Absolutely.
Garcia's spot. He's a piece that they feel like for their future. Eli White, you want him. They want him in the outfield. I know that there was talk, but this was before the Gallo trade, that he was going to get some time at second base. But they feel, and I agree with this, that Eli White's best suited for his athleticism in center field.
Interesting.
And then you have in left field, you've got a combination, David Dahl. You want to see what you got out of David Dahl.
Right.
So there's a possibility, and everything just kind of seems so. I don't know if you would. That might be like we had mentioned with guys you take a chance on, Ian Kennedy, Hunter Pence. Do you take a chance with Nomar Mazara and just say, hey, we'll give you a short chance, and if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work? Right. That's an interesting thing, because Mazara is still relatively young. I haven't heard anything, and I just don't see that happening, to be honest.
But it was kind of far out there.
Yeah. But I mean, if it does bring an intriguing question. And then as far as Nick Solak goes, I'd probably give it, well, first of all, Andy Ibanez is playing really well.
Yes.
So I think, with that being said, I think you still let Nick Solak still do what he does at AAA. Right. But I do think that, and this is a little bit not, this isn't a big stamp of approval, but I would say by September 1st. So in the month of August at some point, I would say Nick Solak would be. But then the question is, who do you kick back? I know where do you eventually say Kurt Terry, it's not working out? I mean, I still think it's too early to make that distinction. But and then Jason Martin has played pretty well too. He had a decent series against the Mariners. So that's another outfielder I didn't mention. And Jason Martin's a guy that they want to really see what they have in him. And that's the other thing in not bringing in Nomar Mazara is you have guys in the outfield. You want to see what they can do. You want to see what you got in them before you bring in anybody else.
Yeah.
But it's intriguing.
It's intriguing, and it was a bit out there. I'm just curious to hear if you had anything bounced off of that.
No, but I would honestly, if tomorrow they're like, oh yeah, we decided Nomar Mazara, the more I think about it, the more, okay, I can kind of see what they're trying to do.
Yeah. They would be getting some of that value that they thought they had in him when he was, a guy who some people had as a dark horse MVP candidate in 2018, but how the mighty have fallen really in that Gallo Mazara outfield core that never really came to be.
I can see another team also taking a chance. Some other team just saying, all right, let's see what he's got. Maybe a team that's depleted in injuries and just as a last second desperation, because when Nomar Mazara is hot, he can carry a team. So I don't think that there's a team that is really depleted. I mean, the White Sox, I don't say the White Sox again, giving him a shot. But yeah,
maybe the Diamondbacks. He seems like a Diamondback fit. Oriole, maybe.
Well, I think they're in the same position as the Rangers. Here's what we got. Let's see what we got.
No, those guys are in a worse position than the Rangers in that they really, besides the Diamondbacks with Ketel Marte and the Orioles with Trey Mancini and Austin Hayes, they just need, and Cedric Mullins, of course.
That's what I was going to say.
They just need warm bodies. Yeah. Guys, the Orioles were, I can't remember who it was, and it's going to escape me right now, but yeah, the Orioles were playing a player who at one point had a batting average below 100 when I saw them come through Houston in a game that I received tickets for late in June. So I'm sure they might be the kind of team to take a flyer on Nomar Mazara.
But you're talking about an Orioles team that went to Houston. Didn't they sweep them in Houston? They did sweep them in that series. So
let's not sleep on the birds.
Hey, let them have their moment. That's all I can say. Let them have a moment. You swept in Houston. If only the Rangers could win a game in Houston.
There you go. Yeah, that is tough to walk away 0-9 in 2021.
And it's tough that the only starting pitcher that had great success against the Houston Astros is now a Philadelphia Philly.
Yep. Yes, he is.
I just want to that's the thing, honestly, like if the A's had gone in and said, we want Kyle Gibson, I could totally see that.
Right.
I mean, Kyle Gibson's not a guy that talks about his track record. Half the time he doesn't know that he has success, but at some point when you constantly are pitching well against the same lineup or similar lineup, you start realizing like there has to be a little bit in Kyle Gibson's mind to know.
Clicks.
Yeah. And he's a good matchup for them. But yeah, no, if I'm Oakland, I don't know if there was an offer, but I'm surprised they didn't make an offer for.
They had a busy trade deadline as well.
They did. They went a little Marte Parte on their side, and then they lost to Luzardo, but
yep.
We'll see how that transpires. And then they added a Yan Gomes. They added a Brazilian.
Yes, they did. And Astros had a busy trade deadline their own way. They didn't make a big splash. They traded a starter. And
how about the Seattle Mariners?
Yeah, talk about a fan base that's angry, like Rangers fans. If you're thinking that you're at a bad spot, go check out Mariners Twitter, because especially after they gave up Kendall Graveman for Diego Castillo to slide in that closer role in a separate trade with the Rays, who didn't need him anymore. He comes in and faces the Rangers, and then before he knows it, he's losing back-to-back games. Jerry DiPoto is playing with fire, and he's a guy who likes to mix it up with trades. So I don't know that those are the right moves for the Mariners. And the Angels did nothing. They just sat completely pat, which honestly I don't think
Andrew Heaney they sent over.
Yeah. Right. So you're right. They did. So I guess they didn't do any. They didn't
bring anybody in.
But they didn't bring anybody in, which that would have been a mistake to buy with this team, because that team is headed nowhere fast. So I guess that's kind of the unexpected impromptu check of the temperature of the NL or the AOS. But it is interesting to see what the Astros and A's did, because I do think that it's Houston's division to lose over these last 2 months, really.
But it's using the Mariners as an example, like those are the types of deals that can deteriorate a clubhouse. Right. Like that, that's at a point like, yes, I mean, I would think, and it's interesting because when I talked to some of the players on Friday after the fact, and you would figure there was a lot of positive, and you're going to get some positivity because you're not going to be like, oh no, we're sad, we don't want to be here. But it was interesting hearing from like Isaiah Kiner-Falefa looking at the farm system, being like, now we've built up our farm system. I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
And to see somebody like Isaiah really put that in, and listen, even Chris Woodward didn't hold back. He's like, yeah, man, it sucks that we lost Joey Gallo.
Right.
I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat that. And for him to say, but you know what? This is the roster we have for the final few months. Let's see what we got. It's go time.
Right. And it's going to be a litmus test for Chris Woodward too, because nobody's come out and saying something outlandish like he's on the hot seat or anything like that. But he really, aside from that first half in 2019, has not had a roster assembled for him to win with. And that's going to give him some latitude for sure. But I think next year, if things don't head in the right direction, we could be having a different conversation this time next year.
I will say this, based on the way the team has performed, especially this last 2 days, you cannot say that they do not want to play.
They respond to him. And the casual fan, again, it's kind of frustrating within the Rangers fan base, kind of the factions that are developing, because the casual fan is going to miss that, right? There's a lot of things that the casual fan is upset about right now, and one of them could be Chris Woodward, but he seems like he just needs a little more time. Yeah,
no, without a doubt, and we'll see what happens these next 2 months. I can't believe 2 months. Were they like 105 games into the season, 106? And then, as we said at the beginning, at this time last year, we're looking at Game 6.
Yep. That is unbelievable.
Man. Garrett, where can the folks find you on the social media, on the credible Twitter?
Yeah, I guess so, right? At G Jones on air there. Also follow us on Twitter at Dallas_Fanatic. Got Mavs coverage, got Stars coverage as well. I do a lot of Stars stuff, so I've got the.
He's
Dallas
your Stars
Fanatic
guru, by the way.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. And they had a busy offseason. They made a signing and they moved some money around, moved some players around, trying to deal with the Seattle Kraken who are coming into the league. That's always a headache, and that's something that MLB fans have not seen since 1998. So if you're interested in what expansion looks like. Right. If you're interested in if you're a baseball fan, you're interested in what expansion looks like in a major sport, go check out the Dallas Stars Fanatic podcast, because we talked a lot about it in the last episode.
Seattle Kraken. You know what? It's about time Seattle got a hockey team.
Right.
A little rivalry there with Vancouver.
Right. Yeah. Unfortunately, they're not. I think they're in the Stars are in Seattle in March next year.
Yeah, I saw the schedule. They don't play them for a while.
Right. So I was hoping for the Stars to align in a bucket list trip, because I was actually in Seattle this past month, and the Mariners were not playing. Obviously, the Kraken hadn't played, so I missed both of them. I would love to go back and catch a Mariners game, the Rangers playing at T-Mobile Park, and catch the Stars playing at Seattle. So if you're a Stars fan and a Rangers fan, you're going to have to wait a little longer on that. But if you go on that trip, I'll definitely be up there with you.
Or you can, if the Mariners are in town and the Kraken are in town, right. even if they're not, I'm just taking a look at T-Mobile Park just as a tour. That would be interesting.
Exactly.
But man, and hockey season still got a while, but I'm ready for it.
It'll be here before you know it.
I know. That's what they all say. That's what they all say. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can follow at aPlinkTX, Instagram at aPlinkTEX, and for Rangers coverage, text DallasSportsFanatic.com/Texas-Rangers. Just had the July awards that came out. I was really, it's funny. I was thinking about, thankfully, yesterday, the 31st game went really well, because I had to make some changes because positive things happened. Obviously, I mentioned as far as Taylor Hearn, the player of the month, not realizing, I feel ashamed about that, because even before the start, I probably should have had him on there. And then the game, I couldn't think of a game outside of the 31st. And so I was thinking about the All-Star game,
right? Which
was a bit of a cop-out.
Yeah.
Joey, you're talking about Kyle Gibson with a 1-2-3 inning, Joey Gallo with a walk, and then though Adolis Garcia's single turn double on the hustle was good. But no, thankfully the Rangers made it exciting on the 31st to cap off a great month.
That they did. It's the oft overlooked baseball reliever, Alex. You're not alone. It happens.
Especially when you finish a month. They did finish 6-19, which
right.
Yeah. I'm not.
That's about as bad as it gets.
No, it could be worse. It could be worse. But let's not go there.
Yeah, let's not.
Garrett, my man, appreciate the time.
Yeah, great conversation, Alex. Keep up the good work. You put Dallas Sports Fanatic on the map.
Thank you so much. And Ranger fans, keep it hanging in there. And like Jose Trevigno says, it's go time.